Now, I've shown you manually how to load data into BI, but when it comes to your real-time practice, do we load data manually? We have millions of records. I cannot load data manually. And what about the accuracy part also? So we never load data manually, just I've shown you to understand how data is storing. But modeling part is same, fine. But once model is ready for this target, I need to load data from maybe from file or from R3, that is from any source system. Now, today what we are going to discuss? How do we extract the data from any other source to the BI system. So that is data flow. Now what we said, our main task is modeling, develop the target. Second task is extraction, link this target to the source, I said, right? So today what I am going to show you is how can I link my target to the source. And what I am doing, so first we are going to discuss today related to the older version. There are a lot of differences between 3.5 data flow and 7 data flow. Right now what we are learning is BI 7.0. Earlier to that it was BIW 3.5. Okay. So now usually even some companies like in the support they are still in support of 3.5. So for you need to understand some 3.5 concepts also. That's what we are going to do. First we are going to discuss about BIW 3.5 data flow, then we'll come to 7 data flow. So first right now what we are going to start is BIW 3.5 data flow. How to extract the data to BIW system, that is the older version. Okay, right. So first we can start with some definitions. Let us say source system. What is that we are going to discuss is first is source system. Now what is source system here? The system from which we extract the data to what? BIW system is called as what? So from whichever system that I am going to extract data to my BIW or BI system, that is called as my source system. Always target will be your BIW or BI, but your source changes according to your requirements. On the day while explaining my overview, I shown where all from we can extract the data I shown. So one is majorly it will be source system is what? R3. 80 to 90% of the cases your extraction will be from SAP R3. Then you can extract the data maybe from files or databases or web-based applications. Okay. Then non-SAP systems. Clear? So the system from which we are going to extract the data to BIW system is called as my source system. Now let us say my requirement is like this. Imagine I have given some file. Okay, let us say the line below is your source system. The line below is your. Suzy, please go on mute. Right. Now let us say I have some given data. Now let us say a file. Imagine data from this file I want to load it into BI system. What is my requirement now? We have given some file. So data from this file I want to load it into Okay. So now first what you have to do? Now what is your source system now? Source system is your file. My target is right now. Now same as this source, what has to be done? I need to develop my target. Yesterday what I did, let us say entire my exercise is nothing but yours. I developed a P table. You have seen yesterday a P table was ready, a target was ready. So the target I have made ready. Now what is my requirement? What are the data that is there in this particular file has to be loaded into this particular target. That means now between these two now you need to develop some connectivity. That is what is a link has to be developed, right? Clear now? The source system is clear? Any doubts with source system? Right. So next definition what we are going to see is called info source. Info source. Okay? Right. Info source defines communication structure. Info source defines what? Communication structure. What is the difference between table and structure? Table holds data permanently. In yesterday machine, there is physical storage of data that is there on the table or not. Whereas structure holds data temporarily. And table can hold n number of records at a time, whereas structure will hold only one record at a time. So structure is like a channel, a gateway. In the database, data has to move from one location to. So now how it passes now is through a channel through a medium called as structure. So structure acts as a channel, a gateway to move the data from one location to another location in the database. So now just you can imagine, like let us say your water pipe. Let us say I want to transfer the water from the tap to a storage area. What will do? We use this one channel, that is pipe. Now what happens? Water through this pipe, what happens? From this medium, from the tap, will come and store into storage area. At the end, is there any water storing in the pipe? No, right? So same way, in the database, in order to move the data from one location to another location, you require a channel called as what? Structure. So info source is nothing but what? You are creating info source is nothing but you are creating one structure in the database. Now what this info source is? What is this info source? You can write the exact definition. You can see. Excuse me. Grouping of logically related. Grouping of what? Logically related. See the terminology what I am using? That means I am speaking about which system? You are speaking about which system? BAW system or source system? BAW system, right? BI or BAW. Source means field cell set. So format, data has to be loaded into the grouping of logically related info objects, in which format data has to be loaded into what? BAW system. How exactly you want to load the data into your target, into your BAW system is defined by your structure called as info source. Any extraction that we start in BAW, it starts with defining of a structure called as what? Now whatever you specify in your info source, only that particular data will be loaded into your target. Suppose what is that I specified here? Number, name, and that means while loading data into the target, while populating the data into the target, only what happens? These three objects will be populated with the data. Understand? So out of entire target that you have, which objects has to be populated with your data is defined by your info source. We said ETL, extract, transform, and so loading takes place through what now? Info source. It's a loading structure. Don't use loading structure, you have to call it as a communication structure. So I am grouping my info objects. These are logically related info objects, specifying what? How data has to be loaded into BIW system. Why you have to specify this info source? Because as we said, R3 is normalized. Now let us say when you are extracting your data from R3, now your data is storing in one table of R3. It is in multiple tables of R3, but when it comes to BI is denormalized. Now that means your target has all the info objects, but when data is coming from the source one, only some few objects has to be populated with data. That's nothing but your info source. Out of entire target that you have, which objects has to be populated with your data is nothing but your info source. Whatever I specify in my info source, only that particular data will be loaded into your target. Clear now what is info source? So any extraction that you start, first what you will do, you will specify one info source. Okay? Right. Suppose, imagine I am specifying let us say we are saying, now what happens? When loading data into the target, even your phone number also will be populated with data. Clear? And info source is specific to which system? Where should I create? BIR source. Info source is specific to BW system or source system? Right? So info source is specific to, that means you have to create your info source in the BW system. Any doubts with info source? How about online? Is it clear? I am moving on to the next thing. Right. So next, what we are going to see is, next definition is data source. Okay, so data source defines transfer structure. What is going to define is transfer structure. Okay, now what is this? Logically related fields. See the terminology, what is it? Grouping of logically related fields. Fields means we are speaking about which system? Source system. Grouping of logically related fields in which format data has to be extracted from the source system. This grouping of logically related fields in which format data has to be extracted from the source system. How exactly you want to extract your data from your source is defined by your data source. So one structure I specified is what data I need to load it into BAW system, that is nothing but your info source. Now one structure you have to specify what data has to be extracted from the source system, that is nothing but your data source. One is info source and other one is ETL. Loading takes place through info source, extraction takes place through data source. So now data source is specific to which system? The data source is specific to, that means you have to define your data source where? In the source system. So we need to define our data source in the structure called data source has to be defined where now? In the source system. So that's what we are saying is data source is specific to the source system. Info source is specific to BAW system. Data source is specific to source system. So now as I said, right now you are extracting data from a file. Right now from where you are extracting now? Now source system is what? File. Now when you are extracting data from a file, will file have different sets of data or only one set of data? One file has only? Now that means if you are extracting data from a file, and moreover, can I create any structure in a file? File is not any system or something, it doesn't have any database or something. It's just only a flat file. That means I cannot create any structures in the file. So if it is a flat file extraction, what is that now? Source system is file. Data source is also? If it is a flat file extraction, source system itself is the what? Data source. That means where I have to define now? You have to define your data source in what? BAW system itself. I cannot create any structure in my source system. So that's why if it is a flat file, your source system itself is nothing but your data source. So what you have to do, where should I create my data source now? I have to create my data source in the I will be creating my data source in the BAW system itself. Now, suppose I specify number, name and, that means while extracting the data from the file, what data it is going to extract now? Only number, name and address. Out of entire data that you have in source, what data you need to extract? That is nothing but your data source. Now, how is data is coming now? Data from the source system, first where it will be coming now? To the data source. So now data from the source system first where it flows? To the clear? Now that is flat file case, but suppose if you are extracting data from R3, if your source system is what? Do you extract entire data from R3? No, right? So in R3, now you have data related to n number of sub-applications. Like in R3 now I have data related to sales, purchase, production, maintenance, HR, finance, controlling, like this. You have data related to all functional. Now, let us say from R3 now I want to extract only sales related data. I want to extract only. Now what is your data source now? It is SD. Now again, in sales, do we extract entire data from sales? In sales, do you extract entire data from sales? Now, how is that now? How is your sales process starts? Let us say. Now first what happens? Customers come and inquire about your product. That means in sales, I have some data related to inquiries. Then based on the inquiries, what you will do? You will be giving them a quotation. You want this product of this much of quantity, I can give you for this much of rate. So based on the quotations, what user is going to, right? Customers will be placing you the, customers will place what? So that is nothing but your sales orders. Customers places to some order, sales order. Now, based on the orders, what you will do? When the delivery date comes, deliver the product, and finally invoice, billing. So let us say, now this is how your sales process, that means in sales now you have data related to these five things: inquiries, quotations, orders, deliveries, and billing. So now these are called events. What are these called as? Each sub-application will have different events. Now under sales, I don't want to extract the entire data. Let us say I want to extract only. Now what is your data source now? It is sales orders. Now order is one transaction. Order is one. Will it be storing in one table of R3? R3 is normalized. R3 is, it will not be stored in one table of. Now each event we will say it has different levels of data. What is that we call? One is called as a header. Then next is called as a item, and one more is called as a schedule line. Each event will have different levels of data. So each sub-application will have different events. Okay, these are the events in that particular application, and each event will have different levels of data. Now this data will go and store in one table of R3. Now R3 is all ready-made tables, I said, na? Let us say this data is going to store in some table called VBAK. Then this data is going to store in some table called VBAP. These are all ready-made tables in R3. And this will be storing in some ready-made table called VBEP. Now suppose under order, again I don't want to extract entire data of order. Let us say I want to extract only header. Now what is your data source now? Sales, orders, header. Where it is storing? So let us say this VBAK table has some 100 fields. Your data source should be same as VBAK table. So from a specific system, this is your specific system. Entire data is nothing but your R3 is your specific system. From a specific source, from a specific system, the specific source of data that you want to extract. Out of entire R3, the particular part that you want to extract, that is called as your what? Data source. Now if it is other than flat file, first where you have to define your data source now? In the source system. Because I am not pulling entire data, I want only a particular part of that. So first you have to create your data source in the source system. From there we will be replicating it into BI or BW system. A copy of this data source is formed even in the BI system also. Understand what is the difference between flat file extraction and other than flat file? Anyhow, right now we are discussing flat file. So let us forget about this R3 part. When I go with R3 extraction, we'll discuss in depth of that. But right now understand what is data source. What is the data source is? Out of entire system that you have, what particular data that you want to extract is called as your data source. Okay? Clear? Any doubts with data source? Yes, online people? Yeah, tell me. Yes, next we are going to come to that. So what is asking is your data source and info source both should match or not? Is your data source and is your info source both should be same or it may be different, or how is that he is asking? Right. Now, remember info source consists of info objects, data source consists of fields. And remember whatever I am extracting may not be equal to what I am loading. Next you will come to that. I will show you the requirement. You will understand that particular part. Now, see how may be the scenarios? One thing, right now what I am representing, you have one source, one target. What may be the other requirements? Now, just now I showed your data is in multiple sources. Normalized, I need to convert it into denorm. That is, one requirement may be multiple sources, one single target. Or, your requirement may be the other way, you have one source, multiple targets. Suppose I have entire data now in one place, but while loading, imagine, now when I am loading, I want three separate cubes. US cube, UK cube and Asia. So US data should go into like that. So it all depends upon your requirements, depend upon the scenario. So next we will understand that part also. So info source and data source may or may not match. Why I will tell you now. What is info source and what is data source is clear? Yeah, any other doubts? Srinivas. Vinay and Sudhi. Venugopal. Then we are moving to the next part. Now, how is data is coming now? Say from source system, first data will be coming to data source. Then from data source, data has to be sent where? To the info source. So next definition what we are going to see is what is that now? Transfer rules. So first is info source, next is data source. Right now what we are going to see is transfer. So now what is transfer rules? You see transfer rules defines how data has to be transformed from what? From data source to transfer rules defines how data has to be transformed from data source to what? Info source. How your data has to transform. ETL. Extraction takes place through data source. The transformation takes place through what? Transfer rules. And loading takes place through info source. Now, how is your data has to go now? Observe. Customer number of the info source excuse me, should get the data from customer number of the data source. The name of the info source should get the data from object to object mapping. From which object of the data source to which object of the. So now I am saying, let us say, what is that? So customer number of the info source should get the data from So what is that now? Object to object mapping. From which field of source to which info object of target. Clear now? So now in transfer rules there are different types are there. Suppose I am using now, I am saying customer number of the info source, get the data from customer number of the, now what is the data here? C1. What data goes here? Now let us say here also same thing. So name of the, so what is that now? Object to, that means without doing any changes, without doing any changes, you are transferring your data. So now, see now what is that? See now, there are different types of transfer rules are there. The first one I am going to discuss now. First one is called info object, or what you can call it as or direct assignment. One is info object, or you can call it as direct assignment. Now what is it? See, whenever we want to so info source name is different, data source name is different. Info source is specific to BAW system, data source is specific to source system. Both can have same name or it may be different names also. Right. So whenever we want to transfer the data from one object of the data source to one object of the info source, we use info object as a transfer rule. So that is nothing but your object to object mapping. So that means without doing any changes, you are just transferring your data from data source to info source. Right? Clear now? So that is what is object to object mapping. Right. So now right now what I have represented here is info object as your transfer rules. Then now second type of transfer rule is called, what the second one is called as constant. Now let us say your data in a source is like this. Imagine I don't have address data in my file. What is my file consist of? Number, name and phone number. Only 3 objects are there. While extracting now, what you are extracting now? Number, name and, so that means is my data source consist of anything called address? There is no address in that. But let us say in my target I want an extra info object called address. But while loading, are you going to load address or not? That means your info source has address or not? Now in this case, is both are same? So info source is different. Data source has only 3 things, but info source has only 4 objects. Let us say while loading now into my address, let us I want to fill it with some constant value. Okay, so I want to fill it with some. Now, whenever I say fill with a constant value, you have to specify the value. What is the value I am specifying now? What is the value I am specifying? India. What happens? Address of the info source is always filled with what? So now your target, always it will be clear. Or you can put it other way also. Suppose imagine your source has, so now while data coming to, okay, but while loading it should become. So if that is the case, either you need not specify in the data source also, right? But imagine, but second target I need to send address. At that time, it depends upon purely on the requirement. So now, what is constant time of transfer on this? Now you are not bothering about the data coming from the source, but I need to make some value as a constant into your target. So then you will be using constant as my transfer rule. So when you use constant as a transfer rule, you have to specify the constant value. Whatever value I am giving, that value will be filled. Understand now? Right. Now what is constancy? Irrespective of the data coming from the source, whenever we want to make some value as the constant in the target, what is it? We use constant as a transfer rule. Clear? What is constant is clear? Right? So I am applying some changes. One is you can see direct assignment. The next one is constant. Then next, so what is the next one is routine. So this is through ABAP code. Okay. Now you can observe front end you can see we are specifying a info source, a structure, then we are specifying a structure called as data source. Then later on what we are saying, how data has to go from, that is transfer rules. So everything you are doing manually, but internally what happens? System will be generating some ABAP code only. Through the execution of your ABAP code only, data is moving from what? Data source to info source. Now I don't want system generated ABAP code. I need to write my own ABAP code. Then you will be using a routine as your. Now suppose my requirement came. So client says he has data C1, C2, but while loading into the BI, let us say he is asking me to prefix all my values with Z. Or I have given one more example. Let us say source has data DD, MM, YY, but when it goes, it should become YY, MM, DD. Any logic. Then what I will do? We have to write a routine. Clear now? So this is now, you have to write some ABAP code to specify how data has to go from data source to. Now, what may be the logic now? I have said now my value should go as ZC1, ZC2. What may be the logic now? Catch the value of what? Customer number. From where? From the, I'll say, in the transfer rule, I'm writing a code, I'll say, catch the value of customer number from the data source. That means what value it is catching now? So it is catching now C1. And in this routine, what I'm going to say, prefix with Z. That means when your code executes, what value it will become? And place it into customer number of the info source. Now what it will become now? Understand the logic? Okay? Now, when data is going now, all will become. Can I use a constant here? If I use constant and say value is Z1, what happens? The entire values will become Z1, but that is not my requirement. Data has to come from the source. But for that data coming from the source, I need to prefix with some Z or something. Then you can use routine as your transfer rule. So now what is routine say? Whenever we want to transfer the data from what? From data source to info source by writing some ABAP code, we use routine as the transfer rule. Clear now? So what is that now? We are transferring the data from data source to info source by writing some ABAP code. So then you are going to use routine as your transfer rule. So next is what is called? Next is what? Formula. So formula will be used for key figures. Formula will be. Now imagine your info source is like this. Sorry, let us say your data source is like this now. So this is your data source. So what is the data source I have? Suppose material number, price and. But while loading data into the target, imagine in my target I have an extra info object called revenue. Source there is no data of revenue, but target extra info object is there. That means while loading I am going to load revenue also or not. That means your info source has, data source is different. Now let us say I have some values here. This is M1, this is some 100, this is some 2. Now I want direct assignment from here to here. Then again price to price is also direct assignment, quantity to quantity also direct assignment. But for revenue, let us say what is my requirement now? We need to apply some formula. What is the formula now I am saying? Price into quantity. That means you are going to perform some mathematical calculations. So multiply value of price into quantity and put it into revenue. So this kind of things, how you can do is using what? Formula as your transfer rule. So that means you are going to transfer the data from data source to info source by doing some mathematical calculation. So formula can be implemented with routine also. Remember, formula can be implemented with. So routine means I have to use my keyboard and I need to do the logic coding. But formula means it's all menu driven. Just use your mouse. No need of any coding. I can just. Okay, now. So now routine means what? Same thing. Cache the value of price from the data source into quantity of data source. Place it into revenue of info source. That is routine. Formula means just only how you use your calculator, right? Same way, just by clicking, you can use it. So now what is formula as your transfer rule? Same thing. Whenever you want to transfer the data from data source to info source by doing some mathematical calculations. By doing some mathematical calculation, we use formula as the transfer rule. See what is transfer rules? Now, as of now, how you can see now data is coming from source system to data source. Then through transfer rules, where it is going now? Info source. Then data has to go from info source to target. So that is called as update rules. So what is the next definition we are going to see? Yes, you can map one field of data source to multiple fields of info source also. You know. So what is asking? One field of data source, you can be mapped to. Now can you see here? Price is mapped to what? Price. And even it is mapped to revenue also or not? Right? So it's not like only one field to one field. So I can use this field for any calculation. That's what I'm mapping now. I have represented here. See? 1 and 2. Same way quantity also. Both are mapped to revenue only. I'm saying inside how to calculate that value is price into quantity. Clear, Vinay? Direct is also possible. Yeah, without any formula also you can use direct assignment. But what happens? If you use direct assignment there, here 100 is there. If I say revenue also direct assignment, there also value goes as 100 only. Something you are. No, data type, that and all should be taken care of. Otherwise, how it will take care now? Okay, fine. Clear? Right. Clear now? Now, what is the next definition now? Data has to go from transfer rules to, transfer rules to, it is going up to info source. Now, data has to go from info source to target. So that is called, what is the next definition is? Update rules. Update rules defines what? How data has to be updated from what? From info source to target. So what is now update rules is? It defines how your data has to be updated from what? Info source to target. Okay? Now, how your data has to go from info source to target is nothing but your update rules. So again, here also same options you have. Direct assignment is there. Routine is there. Formula is there. constant is the same options as your same options of what? Transfer rules. So here also now you have same options as here. But now what is the difference now between transfer rules and update rules? Or put it in another way, now I want to write a routine. Now how do you decide whether you want to write a routine in transfer rules or update rules? Now suppose, what is that I can do? Right now I have written a routine in transfer rules. What is the data in the info source? Z1. I use direct assignment in my update rules. What is the data going? Z1. Suppose here I have used direct assignment. What is the data in the info source now? C1. I will write a routine in my update rules. What data goes in here? Z1. Ultimately, what is the data going to the target is same or not? Either if I write a routine in transfer rules or if I write a routine in update rules, ultimately what is the data that is going to the target is one and the same. Then if that is the case, how do you decide whether you want to write a routine in transfer rules or? So that you can understand, suppose you have multiple targets. So let us say this is my target 2. Now let us say both the targets should get the data from the same source. Now I have one data source, one info source, but from info source to target is what? Update rules. Now this is update rules 1. From info source to target 2 is your? This is, let us say, update rules 2. Now if I write a routine in transfer rules, what is the data in info source now? ZC1. First, what is the direct assignment I am using? What data is going here? Here also if I use direct assignment, what data goes now? Because what is the data in the info source now? So what data goes here now? ZC1 only. Okay? Clear? Now suppose, imagine here I am using direct assignment. What is the data in the info source now? C1. In update rules 1, I am writing a routine. What data is going to the target? ZC1. Here I am using direct assignment. What data goes here? That means your update rules are specific to the target. But what are the transfer rules that you have? It is applied globally to all the target. Because when data come into the info source itself, you have transform data. So both the targets will go now. But update rules is not like that. So from info source to target. So that means update rules are specific to the target, whereas transfer rules are global to the target. So when you want to apply some change, which should apply globally to all your targets that you have, then you can use transfer rules. But when you want to apply some change, which has to apply only for a particular target, then you can use update rules. Now, what is difference is clear now? So transfer rules are globally applied to